Good morning to everybody. And on behalf of the Ananta Centre, it's my great privilege and honor to welcome a very, very special guest. And the guest is the Defense Minister of France, Her Excellency Florence Parly. I've had the great honor and privilege of meeting her earlier. She needs no introduction. She went to Sciences Po, arguably the best university in France, went on to ENA, which has now been the Institut Service Public. And it is from ENA that France chooses the best of the best, creme de la creme, to really become diplomats, civil servants, ministers, prime ministers, and even presidents. So it's a long years in public service. I still remember, Madam Minister, that my first interaction with you was when you were Director General of SNCF, the French Railways, when I accompanied the former Railway Minister Suresh Prabhu. And then I left Paris in July, just after your appointment, and I accompanied the late Defense Minister Arun Jaitley. So it's with really a sense of nostalgia for me, since I was ambassador in your beautiful country, that I welcome you to Delhi. This is your third visit. And frankly, if I was first secretary in the embassy, I would just look at the number of trips you're making and the number of people you're meeting in Delhi and send a cable saying that relations are in excellent shape. So the flow of the program, Madam Minister, if you allow me, the topic will be Indo-Pacific, since that is the flavor of the season, if you like. I happen to co-chair an Indo-European strategic dialogue co-hosted by Ananta Centre and the Ministry of External Affairs. And I can confirm to you that Indo-Pacific loomed large. There are vital stakes that both France and India have in the Indo-Pacific. So if I can request you in the first instance to make your opening remarks for about 10 minutes. And then if you allow me, I'll ask you a couple of questions. And then if time permits, we will allow the audience. We have a virtual audience thanks to COVID. And those of you who are attending it virtually, don't wait. You can shoot the questions to the chat box. So without much ado, and I know that today is your main engagement day and a number of appointments, significant appointments await you. So without much ado, if I can now request you to make your opening remarks. Madam Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and I would like to thank the Ananta Centre for this opportunity. And I would like to thank you personally, of course. And I would like to thank our host, His Excellency, the Ambassador of France to India, Mr. Emmanuel Lenain. Unfortunately, we cannot all be in the same place, but I will be happy to exchange with you through video conferencing. Coming to India is a unique experience, a unique land of vibrant colors, impressive landscapes, and a millennium of rich history. India is unlike any other. So I'm truly delighted that we managed to be here despite the COVID crisis. And if I'm here today, it's to say how precious is the friendship between France and India. It is based on historical and dense relations. And this friendship, this trust that we have in each other, has developed and blossomed considerably in recent years, to such an extent that the distance between the Ganges and the Seine sometimes seems to be lessened. Our relationship is not only one of state to state. It is a friendship between two peoples who strongly cherish their diversity and share universal values. The French Enlightenment is one of the inventors of modern democracy, while India has imposed it as a reference model in Asia. And this is the strength of our partnership, and in part, the reason we share so much. First, France and India are both viscerally committed to national sovereignty and independence. And I think that our industrial partnership is proof of that. France, more than any other country, understands the necessity of the Indian content. And we are fully committed to the Make in India initiative, as well as to the further integration of Indian manufacturers into our global supply chains. Make in India has been a reality for French industry for several years, particularly for defense equipment such as submarines. Second, we both promote multilateralism and the defense of a rules-based international order. When the world and the region experience such upheavals, it's good to refer to rock-solid principles. Third, we are both very involved in building international security. India is one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping operations, and France contributes to international security in many parts of the world. Yesterday in Afghanistan, today in the Sahel and in the Middle East. We also share the ability to mobilize international partners on major issues and global challenges, starting with the fight against climate change. I believe that armed forces have a lot to contribute to the fight against climate change. This is the meaning of an initiative we took at the Paris Peace Forum in November. I think we have a lot to learn from India, which is very determined to meeting the commitments of the Paris Agreement and is actively working on it. Finally, we want to preserve the Indo-Pacific as an open and inclusive area. It must be free from any coercion and based on compliance with international law and multilateralism. To us, the Indo-Pacific is not an artificial juxtaposition of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. It should be understood as a wide geographical continuum facing common challenges. So we have developed an exceptional partnership, and it is more necessary than ever to reinforce it. As you well know, we face both global and regional challenges. The first challenge I see is terrorism. Terror has struck France and Europe repeatedly over the last few years and has not spared the Indo-Pacific, including India. This fight is not over and will continue for many years to come. The threat of attacks on our countries has not disappeared. I'm thinking in particular of the situation in Afghanistan, which is a matter of concern for both France and India. Moreover, this threat needs to be addressed in a comprehensive manner from the Levant to Africa. The second challenge I see is the respect of international maritime law. Everyone knows that some of the waterways are crucial for the economic security of a number of states in the region. They are actually essential for the economic security of many states outside the region as well. No one should consider themselves as entitled to bypass international maritime law. We particularly insist on two principles of the rules-based international order. Disputes should be resolved by legal means and negotiation, not by fait accompli. And freedom of navigation must be upheld. More generally, we need to work together to preserve access to global commons, such as cyber, space, maritime, and air domains. We can see that these are areas of strategic competition, and we must ensure that they do not become the new Far West. These objectives have driven us to upkeep our presence in the Indo-Pacific. The French deployments were very large and unprecedented in 2021. France has deployed an attack submarine, the Emeraude, for 8 months and up to over 15,000 kilometers from its mainland territory across the Indian Ocean, the Pacific, and the China Sea. The mission is part of a larger spectrum of operational activities, such as the air mission Skyros, led in February 2021, or the deployment of the Jeanne d'Arc amphibious task group, which both made stopovers in India. We also took part to multilateral exercises like La Pérouse in the Gulf of Bengal or ARC 2021 in the Japanese waters. Both of them involved Japanese, Australian, American, Indian, and French navies. We do not see France and India as the two poles of an exclusive partnership, but rather as the core of a network of cooperation. We are already working together with the countries of the Indian Ocean, for example, to respond to the environmental disasters and, if possible, to address them. The case of the Hurricane Idai in Mozambique in 2019, and more recently in Mauritius, following the shipwreck of the Wakashio cargo ship, where France and India were the first to provide assistance, clearly demonstrate we have a shared spatial status and responsibility in the Indian Ocean region. We are involved in regional forums, such as the Indian Ocean Navy's Symposium or the Indian Ocean Commission, which France is very proud to chair this year. In conclusion, I must mention the particular responsibility of France as the EU Council presidency next semester. We do have great ambition for the European Union, including in the field of defense. In particular, we plan to adopt what we call the strategic compass, which is the very first defense white paper of the European Union. The Indo-Pacific region will also be on our agenda. After the adoption of the Indo-Pacific strategy, it is a question of giving it life so that the EU becomes more involved in the region and uses all its levers to further our common vision. And I can tell you, we are already working on this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister, for that tour d'horizon of everything that is happening in the Indo-Pacific. I want to begin by asking you a question on the Indian Ocean theater, because there is a sentiment in India that the Indo-Pacific has two theaters, the Indian Ocean theater and the Pacific Ocean theater. The Pacific Ocean theater appears heavily invested, the United States, Japan, Australia, and so on. The Indian Ocean theater appears light in comparison, especially in connection with the Quad. And that is why I'm convinced that it is the Franco-Indian relationship that will drive things in the Indian Ocean. I read with great interest a press release ahead of your visit, which talked of the centrality of India, and that attracted my attention. You've also given an interview today to a national daily in which you say India is the foremost strategic ally in the Indian Ocean. Most people don't realize in India that you are the only European country which has physical territories in Indian Ocean. I've been to Reunion Island, so I can testify. It's amazing the kind of biodiversity it has, the kind of overseas territories that you have. You have stationed troops there. So really, India has to look to France. But my question to you is, can you elaborate just a little bit on the centrality of India and why you think India can be the foremost ally? And I'm now talking about the Indian Ocean. Thank you, Madam Minister.
Thank you very much for this question. As you mentioned, the Indo-Pacific is a very wide area. And the political focus is more and more put on the eastern part of this large area due to the tensions in relation with China. But Indo-Pacific is also made out of the Indian Ocean. And there's no doubt that India is at the center of this area. And you kindly remind that, yes, we are an Indo country through this La Réunion Island that we have. What we see is that there are also many tensions in the Indian Ocean, especially in the eastern part of Africa. And it is our joint responsibility to make sure that we can contribute to ease up the tensions there. And if I come back to the Indo-Pacific strategy that the European Union decided to have, we think that we should be more present as France, but also as the European Union in the Indian Ocean. And we tested something that we call the maritime coordinated presence that we tested in the Gulf of Guinea. And we would like to extend this concept of having a maritime coordinated presence to the Indo-Pacific. And as a first example, we are thinking about something in the Indian part of this area, because we see that the Mozambique Canal is a very hot place to be protected. It is a place where terrorist groups are present and could put at risk commercial maritime routes, but also could spread out in other areas in the region. So yes, we see the Indian Ocean as a very important place where Europeans should be more. And of course, in our bilateral relationship, we have experienced several times joint exercises, mainly with our navies. We have Varuna year after year, and we made it despite the COVID crisis, so which is an achievement. And we are eager to continue and develop this maritime cooperation. So the Indian Ocean is a very appropriate place to be together.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. If I can turn to the Pacific theater, India was a little naive about its relations with China. I say so frankly to you. It's not the official point of view. I can speak a little freely. But it seems to me that I'm curious to know how France and EU see Chinese actions in the Pacific theater, because at the end of the day, the principles on which France and India agree on Indo-Pacific in terms of the freedom of navigation, in terms of overflight capacity, in terms of even, as you rightly said, I think it was again a press release which said no hegemony in Indo-Pacific. I liked it because that is precisely the motivation for India and France. How do you do this? How do you see this from France and EU when it comes to China? Because we are all in the same situation. Maybe India is in a different situation because we have a border with them, and the border is hot between you and me. But even EU engages with China. There is a fair bit of trade and so on. So how do you do this delicate balancing act vis-a-vis China in the Pacific theater, and really try and stick to the fundamental principles which bind countries like France and India in the Indo-Pacific?
As you very rightly said, it's a delicate balance that must be found. China is a major country. There are areas where cooperation can be envisaged and developed. You probably remember that China played an important role when the Paris conference about climate change happened 6 years ago. And China is, of course, a major player to implement this fight against climate change. China is also a partner for trade and commerce. But we see as well that China is getting more and more aggressive in the region. And it is even more specific when it comes to the China Sea. So France and, if I may, India share the same views on something which is key. I mean, the international maritime law, the freedom of navigation. The freedom of navigation is not only a principal concept. This is, of course, among the set of rules we comply with, but it also something which put at risk the freedom for navigation and trade. And most of the goods use these lanes, maritime lanes. So these maritime lanes must remain free. So we see that sometimes there are attempts to close this China Sea. And we want to make sure that this freedom of navigation is respected. That's why, despite we are far from our homeland, we deploy regularly our ships, our navy, to express our right to navigate freely in these waters. And when we started our Indo-Pacific strategy at a national basis, level, sorry, we immediately thought that we should extend this Indo-Pacific strategy at European level. And the idea we had in mind was to try to cooperate better, to have a more continuous presence at European level in this area and in these waters. So I think it's good that many countries which are committed to the international rules-based order demonstrate in very practical way their commitment by having ships circulating or sailing in these waters.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. I want to also ask you a question on the multipolar world. And I used to joke with my friends in Paris that your white paper on foreign policy and defense policy, if it were to be incorporated by India, India doesn't have a white paper. All you have to do is translate French into English. And we find that there are so many convergences, including a commitment, a non-negotiable commitment to a multipolar world. It is in India's abiding interest if the European Union can become an independent and significant pole in this multipolar world. If EU has to become an independent and significant pole, it has to have a foreign defense policy and a security deterrence, a robust security deterrence. If EU has to have a security deterrence, I see only one country which can drive it. And I'm not flattering you. It's France. Because you are the permanent member. You are the one who has got the nuclear deterrent. So I want to probe you a little bit on what your plans are as you take on the presidency on 1st of January. We've got hotspots in Taiwan. We've got hotspots in Ukraine and other places. But what are your medium to long-term plans on EU becoming this independent, significant pole, as I say, with a military deterrence, which I believe is very, very significant?
As you said, France will chair the EU Council as from the 1st of January next year. It is a very key moment for EU regarding its defense and security policy. It is quite a new policy. It has started a few years ago, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, and developed quite significantly. But we started from scratch. And now our responsibility will be through this strategic compass I mentioned, the white paper for the European defense, to set a higher level of ambition for the EU in this particular domain, and to make sure that we will have the right tooling to meet the ambition set. So we have met some steps along those years, as now we are able to deploy some coalitions outside of the European Union borders. For instance, the Sahel is a very good example. We are present with 10 European countries in the Sahel. And we have built up some tools to develop military capacities, equipments, and as European Union, we have also created a financial tool to subsidize the research and development in military equipments. So that's a very good starting point. And now we are working on having a strong policy in order to protect what we call the common not goods, but common and common areas or common domains. I explain. I will give more details. For instance, cyber is a common domain. Space is a common domain. Sea is a common domain, and we can see that there is a strong competition around these domains. Look at space, for instance. Space has been seen for years as an area where you can develop services for population through satellites of communication or observation. But it's very recent that we see that space can be a competitive area. And we have seen very tough behaviors in space. When missiles strikes satellite in the space, then it creates many debris, which put at risk our satellite assets, which are in space. So we see that these commons must be protected. And we see also that in the sea, trafficking is developing, fishing, fish traffic is developing, and so on and so on. So the protection of these common areas will be one of our priorities during this presidency of the European Union.
I'm very interested in your concept of strategic compact, and I'm going to follow it with interest when the white paper comes out. Madam Minister, your statement has evoked a lot of interest. I'm not sure we will have time for all the questions. I'm now going to the audience, the virtual questions. One question on Rafale. They say that the Indian Air Force is extremely happy with Rafale. Can you give us more?
In which terms? More details or more Rafale?
More Rafale is what they mean, actually. But I don't know if there are discussions and whether you can share anything in this regard. I'm just passing on the question. So
absolutely. So first of all, I am very happy that the Indian Air Force is satisfied with its Rafale, and we are very proud that despite COVID, the 36 aircraft will be delivered on time and according to the contract. It's a real achievement, and I was lucky enough to participate and attend the ceremony in September last year, the induction of the first aircraft within the Indian Air Force. So it will be a real asset for our bilateral cooperation, as using the same aircraft is a real asset and strength. I'm sure that there is room for new developments. We, as France, are ready to answer any additional needs or requests that could be made by India. We know that aircraft carrier will be soon delivered, that aircraft are needed. So we are open and ready to provide any other Rafale if this is India's decision.
I'll be remiss if I did not note that France has been a reliable strategic partner. That is the sense in India. It's largely a trouble-free strategic partnership. And I would like to point to the fact that France has stood by us, and I'm now going back several years, not just now. So I think there has been a record of France standing by India through thick and thin, and that is something we appreciate. There is a question from the foreign editor of Hindustan Times who asks, will there be an impact of AUKUS on the Indo-Pacific region and Franco-Indian relationship?
No, the geography will not change. And France is an Indo-Pacific country. You reminded that we are present in the Indian Ocean with La Réunion. We are also present in the Pacific with the Polynesian Islands and the New Caledonia. We have roughly 1.6 million inhabitants in the area. So we are an Indo-Pacific country. And we want to develop a very close multilateral relationship with the neighboring countries. Of course, India is at the center of this strategy. We had developed a very good relationship with Australia. Then Australia made its own decision. I will not comment on that. It's, of course, very disappointing for us, but we will continue being a major partner, hopefully, for all countries which want to develop the same strategy in the area.
That's a very reassuring reply, Madam Minister. I thank you for it. The last question from one of my senior colleagues, retired Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, is a very interesting question. He says the European Union has two tendencies. One, which is a German bias in favor of trade over strategy, and the French, who have a truly strategic vision vis-a-vis China. And he's asking, when France assumes the presidency on 1st January, will you be required to reconcile these two, I don't want to say contradictory because he didn't use it, but these two tendencies? Do you see it that way?
Well, first of all, as a president, France will have to accommodate the views of the 27 EU member states. But as I mentioned, we will try to finalize and to get the strategic compass, the white paper, endorsed by the European Union Council. But keep in mind that this strategic compass was launched by a very specific country that you mentioned, I mean, Germany. Oh, so Germany
that is interesting.
Was the country who decided and suggested first and then promoted this strategic compass. So I think that it's a good answer to your listener, that a country well known for its trade bias also takes care of strategy. And of course, France, which takes care of strategy, is of course involved very much in trade issues.
No, that's a perfect answer. I had no idea that it was Germany who proposed the strategic compass. That is a perfect answer. Madam Minister, I know that you have a busy day. Thank you very much for your time. I don't want to summarize, but I do want to, if you allow me, just 1 minute of my takeaways. One, I think Franco-Indian bilateral relationship is in fine fettle, as the English say. It's in good shape. The Franco-Indian strategic and defense ties are going from strength to strength. I'll be remiss if I do not thank you for your personal leadership, because I know that these things don't happen without leadership. And I want to really place on record India's deep appreciation for your leadership. I wish you very well in all the meetings that you're going to have. They're significant meetings. And I would like to wish France a wonderful presidency so that the world can be peaceful and you can bring security and prosperity to Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to Indian authorities to welcome me today here in New Delhi.
Thank you.